All right, live Thursday. I know, Thirsty Thursday. Back when I was in college, that meant something. But
Yes,
now it means that I drink water. Stay hydrated, folks. Stay hydrated.
right. It's getting
Here.
hot out there.
Absolutely. Except for today, it's frigid. It is frigid. It is a balmy 70 degrees here in lovely Dallas.
I know.
As you can see, I'm wearing a light jacket. Um, as I don't want to fall victim to the elements.
I know. It's like you know, it's like you've acclimated down here.
I am, I've it's I have gone, I've gone full circle. Um, oh, Shaka. So Shaka's got a quick question.
Sure.
I'm glad I'm not back home in Wisconsin. To my friends in the great north, my heart goes out to you. It sounds like you guys are getting a good bit of snow. This time last year, we got 28 inches in lovely Wisconsin, where I'm from. This year, it's 12. So, hey, silver lining, half as much. Um, so, guys, today we're coming to you. So we were going to have Shyla Trout, our title lady, our title closer, on with us today, but unfortunately, despite the good weather, she's feeling under it. So we're going to have her on at a later time. We hope that you guys found a ton of value with Sam yesterday. One of the things that we talk about, especially in relationship, is it's about leveraging relationships. Everybody you talk to in real estate talks about it's relationship, relationship, relationship. I was talking to a friend today that does commercial, and they're like, you're going to spend so much time, chasing your tail unless you have the right relationships. Even in wholesaling, guys, you need to have an army of people out there working with you, working for you. We met with AB yesterday. AB is one of our group members, and he's a great guy, phenomenal, super, super happy. One thing I want to say, guys, if you are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and you would like to meet up with us and would like to connect to see if there are creative ways for us to work together, let us know. We are always down to help our fellow savvy real estate investors on ventures such as that. But we met with AB, and you just have other eyes and ears out there, and it's like we can all win together. Trust me, there are. But that was a debate that I got into today when I was talking with commercial realtor. They're like, there's not many distressed sellers out there. I respectfully disagree. There are tons of distressed properties out there, tons. But anyway, today what we were talking about is, guys, we see a lot in these different groups, people talking about creative financing. And one of the things that you will hear us preach about all the time here in the group is don't force a deal. There are a lot of things that can go wrong. And, Mike touched on it last week. He's going to be on tomorrow, by the way. But Mike touched on it when he was here of you are messing with people's lives. We are in the business of dealing with people. We are in the relationship business, and we are problem solvers. And I understand that one of the ways that being a problem solver can be taken is, well, if a person wants to get out of a property, it's my responsibility to do whatever is necessary to help them move on from the property. Yes and no. And so today what we're going to be talking about is what other people refer to as creative financing, creative real estate investment. So now we're talking about things such as the big one, subject to, wraps, owner finance. We can talk a little bit about seller finance, the two different sides of that. There are so many different things. I mean, Rob, why don't you take it away a little bit and kind of explain to us, your thoughts on there. I guess we'll bring us up to speed really quick as to explain the big one. What is subject to? What is subject to?
So, subject to is buying a property by taking over the existing obligation that's on the property. And when I say obligation, typically what that means is the mortgage that's on the property. You just go in and you stand in the shoes of the original borrower. So you take over their payments. What you typically are going to have to do in the subject to payment is they're usually behind. So you catch them up, and then you pay them something to go away, usually moving money or whatever. and then you turn around and start taking over the mortgage payments and making those payments. And the issue I always have with subject to is that there are situations that this works. There are situations where this is a great idea and it's brilliant and you should probably try it. And the thing is that when you go out into the Facebook groups, it's like you take subject to for like if you stub your toe, you take subject to for everything. You got a headache, subject to, you like
a headache, subject to aspirin.
That's right.
Oh.
So it's like you use it for everything, and it's like you absolutely don't. And so what I try to do is and we're going to post it right after this, is just do a little one pager on here's what subject to is, here's when you use it, here's when you don't use it, and here's the things that you have to watch out for. And to sum it up really quick, it's that when you buy something subject to, you have to understand that you're inserting yourself into a two-party relationship that you are not meant to be a part of. And so the lender does not have to agree. And what most lenders do is they have what's known as a due on sale clause, which simply means that when the property is sold, they can accelerate the loan and call it due immediately.
So one thing, like I want to reiterate that, guys, because the very first time Rob was teaching me about subject to, the look on my face was like, what? Literally, the bank will not take your money. Most people think that just because they are paying on a mortgage on time and the correct amount, that the bank is going to be like, hey, let bygones be bygones, man. Your money's good here. Wrong. And so Rob is only saying this, not, yes, he's an attorney and he speaks on experience of saying he right and the wrong. No, he's had this stuff called on him before.
Yes.
So it's from experience.
That's right. I literally had this happen where we were taking over the payments for a borrower, and we had sent in probably $3,000-4,000, and the bank literally just sent it back and said, we will not accept this. You are not party to the contract. You're not someone that we're going to give any information to, and we're going to go ahead and foreclose on them. And the reason why, and you just have to understand, is that when you do a mortgage, it's a contract between you and the lender, and you're promising and guaranteeing that you're going to pay the money back. And what happens in a subject to situation is that the person that they had agreed to lend the money to skips town, and you as the investor are coming in and saying, don't worry, I'm going to pay it. And the lender, especially when they're a larger lender, like a larger bank or institutional lender, that's not something that they are interested in. What they're interested in is making sure that their agreements don't get violated over and over and over again. And so I'm not saying that you cannot subject to a large bank one time. What I'm saying is that if you were to follow the conversations that you see in these Facebook groups, where subject to is the answer to everything, once it starts getting abused, at that point in time, the bank just calls the loans due and forget it, and so they will just stop taking payments. And like Kyle mentioned, I mean, this happened to me. So when is it a good thing? Subject to is a good thing when you're dealing with a property where you have a homeowner or a borrower that is not going to be able to keep making the payments, that is a little bit underwater, that you can come in there and take over. And ideally that you have some equity into the house that you're getting into. The other part of that equation where it becomes a really viable kind of option is that when you're talking about a private lender. So if I'm the lender and say I lended money to, Kyle, and he winds up selling the house to Mike subject to. If Mike will come to me and say, "Hey, I'm going to take over Kyle's payments and make them on time," well, I'm a private lender. I don't worry about setting a bad precedent because I don't have a million loans out there. I have like two or three. And so I'm fine as long as I keep getting those payments from Mike, but my agreement's with Kyle. So if the investor doesn't pay, the person that actually borrowed the money is still on the hook. So that means that the lender can come in and actually sue them or still foreclose on the property if they're not getting their money. So I mean that's it's a more favorable situation when you have a private lender because then you can go straight to them, and that becomes a situation where I think subject to is not a bad idea.
There you go. So, and Mike talked about it. We're just kind of reiterating. We're going a little bit deeper here. Is that we're not saying don't do it, guys. We are not saying it. It is a tool in your tool belt to use. It's kind of a break glass in case of emergency type of, thing to use because, think about it like this is that the bank can call the note due at any time. So if you put somebody into that property a year later, 2 years later, the bank can call the note due. And now suddenly somebody that was well-intentioned that's thinking that they're going to be getting a home is gone.
Yeah.
And so, these are things that you run the risk of all simply because you want a little bit of mailbox money. Because when we talk about mailbox money, subject to is paid out kind of in a monthly, you're getting the margin of, I'm paying the mortgage of $500, but I'm charging you $8. So I'm making a spread of $300 a month. And I'll be honest with you guys, if you're in this to try to make a living, if you're in it to try to get paid, there really are very few subjects to deals that come across the table that really even move the needle financially for me. If I get most of the time, they're enough to cover my cell phone bill. Maybe people.
The thing with this and where it comes into play a lot is that this is a strategy that people use a lot of times for buy and hold. And in that situation, it really does help if there's a private lender because you just negotiate out the agreement with them. Or if you have good credit and can turn around and take out the underlying mortgage with a traditional bank mortgage, that would be the perfect situation to go ahead and do it in. But the one tool that people have used in the past, and it's not something that I would ever recommend, is something known as a contract for deed. And I'll go into more depth about contract for deed at a later time, but just basically what it is that it is literally a contract where normally when you buy a house, you go ahead and get your financing, and you get the deed immediately. Well, with the contract for deed, you only get the deed after the contract is completely satisfied. Well, the thing is that if you go and do a contract for deed for 25 years, technically you have to wait until those 25 years worth of payments are made before you have ownership of the property. And what happens, I guarantee, is that somewhere in that time frame, you're going to be late on a payment. You're going to have a car wreck. You're going to have like a death in the family. Something's going to happen where you might miss a payment. And the truth is that is then known as a breach of contract, and you can be your opportunity for actually getting that property can go away. And so, contract for deeds. The idea is that they're used in subject to because then there's not really a change in ownership. When it gets so complicated to avoid, when your goal is just avoiding responsibility on deals, that's when I kind of like try and throw up a stop sign and say, wait a minute, what are we really doing here? So, and again, there's places for it, but it's not every day.
If you are a new investor, that's one thing that we caution. If you are new to real estate investment, if you are new to wholesaling, if you are just looking at, I would caution heavily against doing some. There are so many things that can go wrong, and Rob even talked about it. It is right for the right type of strategy. It is right for
Right.
the right type of strategy. So again, like I said, don't sit here and think they're like, oh well, the savvy real estate investors are like, don't do subject to, it's terrible. No, we want you guys to go out into the market and be so well armed with information, and we talk about it all the time. We want to maximize all of your deals. We want you guys to make so much money it's sick, and then turn around and be like, those guys are pretty cool. And when we talk about subject to, the reason why we caution so much against it is there are so many things that can go wrong. And yes, it can be easy to do, but there are, if it's too good to be true, chances are that it is.
I mean, the thing that makes it attractive for a lot of people is that it's a much smaller outlay of cash, and it allows you to get into bigger deals. The problem with it is that you're also getting in there with, um, not as much protection, and and the way I kind of equate it is like today is the first day of the Masters. Well, if the only thing I've ever done is putt putt, I'm not going to go out and win the Masters. you know and so that's why when we go through things, we're going through the ABCs of wholesale after you've mastered the basics. And so that's really what we're trying to say here more than anything else. It's like there is a time and place for this, but it's usually not your first deal. And it's usually not when you're trying to learn everything. So hope that clears that up a little bit for everybody.
I think so. Okay, accidentally. Or we got interrupted for a second, but no, I think, and again, guys, if you ever have any other questions about subject to, after this, Rob's going to throw up a quick document kind of talking about it a little bit more. It'll probably be one of the more popular subjects just because we do hear people talk about it quite a bit. We see it in other groups. Again, we do our homework quite a bit on these things. So if you guys have any more questions about subject to, if you have any more questions about other things, let us know. Tomorrow, Mike from Simple House will be back on with us. We had such a huge outcry from people the last time that he was on. So if you want to talk to Mike, again, they are a wholesaler here in Dallas. They're doing over 30 deals a month right now. They're in the process of scaling up to over 60 deals. I mean, these guys, they're doing 10,000 ringless voicemails a day. I mean, crazy 50, we're talking hundreds of thousands of ringless voicemails. They're doing direct mail. They're doing pay-per-click. They have people, they have people driving for dollars. I mean, this is a large scale operation. So, there are things that, we could have talked to Mike for hours on last time. So if you guys have any more questions for him, drop them below. If you have any more questions for us, as always, we are here. We are a resource. We want, to make you guys some money. So go out, make it a great rest of the day. And remember, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense.